Welcome to today's Shifted Ed podcast. Today we're talking with Assistant DG from Lesterby Pearson School Board, Tom Rhymes. He's taken some time out of his busy schedule to talk with us today about the shift that's going on amidst our pandemic. So thanks for talking to us today, Tom. Let's start off by rewinding the clocks a little bit and think back to that famous March 2020, Friday the 13th, I believe it was, to be exact. What happened? What went down over at Lesterby? How did everything start to unfold?
Well, Chris, I'm going to start by saying that seems like such a long time ago,
Doesn't it?
and I don't think the surreal nature of all of this has ever gone away. It was a surreal feeling, and I can remember it as clear as a bell. Working here in the board office, not really knowing what in the heck was going to happen on that fateful Friday the 13th. It was easy to remember, and who'd have called that it would have been Friday the 13th
Exactly.
when we quote unquote closed down for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It had, I would say, beyond a Twilight Zone feel to it. To say we're shutting down because of what honestly felt like a movie or a TV show or something, and then feeling our way through that both professionally and personally. And I think that's the thing that we perhaps haven't spoken about, is that this is a journey that we as a system have been undergoing, have been living professionally, but we're simultaneously living that personally. So there's not even any sense of walking away from the professional challenge, because that same challenge is presenting itself in our personal lives. And perhaps that's what's made it so extraordinary, is there has been no, I don't know if using the word escape, but there has been no escape from this. It's pervasive in everybody's life, but we've been trying to manage this new reality professionally while we're also trying to manage it personally, and that, I think, is perhaps the extraordinary thing.
As we reflect on what happened in the end of our 2019-2020 school year, there was lots of reflection that went on, and lots of looking to the future and how are we going to survive this pandemic in schools. How are schools going to adapt to the changing landscape? So if we look back at that, Tom, what were some of the key moments or the big takeaways that helped you get ready for school starting up in September 2020?
I would, it was difficult managing, and I think it's easy for everybody to be critical of how all of this was managed, but we also have to recognize, to call this an extraordinary circumstance is to understate it. So I won't dwell on the pivots and the change in policy and directions. That is what it is. But I think there are two things that I took away from the spring that really impacted how we approached the startup in August. And the first one is, I think I would say, Chris, the revelation when, for better or for worse, we had a call to finally open our schools for what were called pedagogical camps, les camps pédagogiques, in late May and early June, which sent a lot of people for a real spin, because we'd been through the ringer, incredibly stressful, trying to kind of make it to the finish line, and suddenly we had this expectation dropped in our laps that we were going to open for students. And I can get emotional talking about this, because to me it really speaks to what motivates our educators and what drives the people who are working in our system. That when those schools primarily, well, it was exclusively the elementary schools, not exclusively, but primarily the elementary schools. Some of our high schools were able to get them going, but the heartfelt, true, honest, raw emotion of the people working in the system when they saw those kids. Um, and it's difficult for me to talk about it because it was very moving to have our people say, "Oh my goodness, some of our kids are in really rough shape." It wasn't all Netflix and chocolate cake at home for some of them. They needed to be in school. They needed to be with friends. They needed to be out of the house. And I think that was a revelation to the people working in the system about how much it meant and how much it means for kids to be around their peers. And I think that drove a lot of people in terms of their readiness for August and their readiness for September, because they recognized the importance of having kids come to school, not the learning. I mean, the learning is there, and the learning will always be there. But taking away that socialization, taking away that peer-to-peer contact, and even how important the educators are for those kids, that was a revelation. So there was a commitment, I think, a real commitment to make it work. There was fear, obviously. There was anxiety. There continues to be anxiety. But I think people felt a calling, a real need to provide this for the kids. The second thing I would say is and it goes hand in hand with that, was we wanted to keep it as simple as possible.
Sure.
Extras, expectations for extraordinary pedagogy, that stuff would come. Let our objective be to get these kids into the building, to get them in the building safely, to have everybody who's working with us to be safe and be able to provide what they need, which is a place to be together with their peers and learn and grow and laugh and cry and all of those things that in many ways were denied them during the shutdown.
Let's talk a little bit, Tom, about how professional development has changed. The landscape for professional development has shifted, where we're maybe focusing a little less on content and we're focusing more on how do we create a relationship through online learning, and how do we keep kids engaged and wanting to go forward with learning. Can you talk to us a little bit about the change in professional development that Lester B. Pearson has been experiencing since the pandemic began?
Well, I think, Chris, it's a great question, because it's always the struggle of doing your training while you're doing the job. And it incidentally kind of drops in and out of your school year. Sometimes I'd like to say that this is education's finest hour, because I have been so struck by how creative educators have been in the face of the challenges that are in front of them, and realizing their capacity to be creative and needing to do things that they've never done before, but being able to do them, being able to look at things that they normally have done in class, or activities that were anchors of their program, and then figuring out how to tweak them and adjust them, maybe change the direction a little bit, but still get the outcome that they want. That has been incredible. Similarly, we've invested obviously a lot of time in I guess what I would call a distance pedagogy. Meaning how do you extend beyond 7 50-minute Zoom calls or what have you, and And the degree to which our educators have been receptive to this has been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, because they want to be creative. And it sort of goes back to what we were discussing earlier, I think, where it's stripped down. We strip down our lives and we strip down our professional lives to some very basic things in the face of a pandemic. We often think of creativity in very grandiose terms, right? We think there's lots of bells and whistles and it's flashy. But the degree to which people are being creative by tweaking things that they've always done to make them work. For example, if their students are locked in a bubble for 2 weeks, there's an incredible amount of creativity required to have that work, to keep students engaged, to make things interesting, and to find people finding in themselves that creativity has just been it's humbling for me. I'll say it again, I cannot believe what people are doing to make this work. And the PD is in many ways orienting our educators to see how they can be creative and how they can make minor adjustments in what they've done so that the student experience is still a really positive one.
We're left to deal with a little bit, what do we do with the students that are unable to come to school and that we still have to provide an education, school routine, classroom routines with. Talk to us a little bit about what you're offering at Lester B. I believe you have 500 students online, so it's almost like it's a whole other campus that you've had to create. So talk to us a little bit about that online school that you're having to develop kind of on the fly.
That's unfolding, and it continues to unfold. And that, in many ways, we were lucky. We had a consultant working in kind of a virtual campus sort of setup for us for a couple of years prior to the pandemic. Working on some online option courses and trying to orient and work with some teachers in our high school network to look at blended models where some of what they would do would be online and not having necessarily the need to see students physically, six times a week for 50 minutes, but perhaps there could be some online elements. So we were fortunate in that a lot of the groundwork, a lot of the legwork for setting up the training and the structure for the online campus had been done, and we had some connections with some groups in New York State and in California that pre-existing partnerships and relationships that helped us with that. What has been difficult is I think the same thing that's been difficult for many school boards, at least in the English side. The volume of students, we're over 600 students in our online campus, which basically is like opening a school from scratch on the fly, and constant traffic in and out of that school. So people's circumstances are changing. Situations that may have existed in August don't exist anymore, or situations that didn't exist in August now exist. So people are in and out of those classes, and that movement has been a challenge. Staffing has also been a challenge. I mean, we didn't necessarily plan for opening a whole new school and having teachers available to staff the online campus has been a challenge, and trying to find people who are available and willing to take on that challenge I won't say that it's been easy. I won't say it's been impossible, but it's been a sort of an ongoing work in progress. But there are success stories there. There are certainly the feedback we're getting from students after some initial sort of challenges to open up. The feedback from students and from parents has been positive. It's working. And what will be interesting is to see once we're out of this twilight zone. Whether there's traction to maintain not necessarily an online school per se, but a campus of sorts where there are courses that we can offer from a distance in the name of innovation.
I guess my final question, Tom, is has your vision or the school board's vision changed about the direction of education or the direction that it's going on? Thinking about school redesign, having to build a whole new virtual campus, I'm sure there's a lot of those conversations that are going on of that transformation. How do we do it? Has your vision changed at all of how you used to see schools as opposed to how you're seeing them now and the direction that they're going in?
I'm not sure I would say my vision has changed, because the part of, as I mentioned, this is a thread that we've been pursuing for a while, and certainly there's lots of professional talk out there about what school could look like. But I think what has changed for me is this realization of how far we would have to go to make it happen. People out of necessity, and I keep going back to that word creative, people out of necessity have become creative in what they're doing. And educators, teachers, integration aides, support staff, everybody is realizing that they have it in them to do that. They have the capacity to do things a little differently. I tell you one thing, and it's a small thing, but in traveling around to schools, and I think the impetus for this was out of safety, but I also think people are realizing it's a good thing. The number of teachers who have moved outside with their students, the number of schools I'll drive by in the middle of the day and see 3, 4, 5 classes outside doing whatever it is they're doing. And that's a small thing, but students are learning in that kind of circumstance. Teachers are realizing that students can learn in that kind of circumstance. They probably always knew it, but we're kind of looking to give themselves permission to go in that direction. That sort of thing in itself is huge. You don't need to be at the desk. You don't need to be in the room. You can be outside in very meaningful learning activities. The idea of blended models, as much as our 15-year-olds say, or in your case and in my case as well, our university-aged kids are going, oh my gosh, sitting through Zoom session after Zoom session after Zoom session. I don't think our educators are all that keen on sitting in and delivering in Zoom session after Zoom session after Zoom session, and they're discovering things that they can do where they don't have to do that. Discovering ways of delivering pedagogy or engaging students in more project-based blended kinds of models, which is very engaging for students, very, very engaging for students. Your learning outcomes are enhanced with that. And it's not teacher directed. It's student directed. And I don't think that that's something that's going to go out with the bathwater. I think that there are a great number of people who are going to carry those lessons and say, it really fundamentally changed the way I approached my teaching.
I want to thank you, Tom, for this great conversation. It's a very timely conversation, I feel, and I think a lot of your words will really help our community starting to understand a little bit about what the future holds and how things are kind of going. So I really want to just thank you for that, and thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. I know your schedule is probably extremely full, so your time is much appreciated, and I really want to thank you with all our hearts for coming and sharing your experiences with us.
My absolute pleasure, Chris. My absolute pleasure. And like I said, I think this is education's finest moment. They're keeping it together.